Before we begin, I'd like to address that another YouTuber who I actually mentioned in this very video covered the same subject with many points crossing over. Sorry about that, but I hope you are all able to enjoy regardless. Anyways, on to the video. Anime. The first thing which comes to mind is probably some form of shonen or battle-centric series. Dragon Ball or My Hero. Of this genre, the most extraordinarily successful are adaptations from the magazine Weekly Shonen Jump. Again, DBZ, MHA, but also One Piece, Naruto, Demon Slayer, all Shonen Jump. But you probably already knew all that. Today, we're talking about one of Shonen Jump's newer series, Chainsaw Man. So before I dive into what really makes it so exciting and interesting, and exploring the deeper elements, let's ask, what is Chainsaw Man? Chainsaw Man is metal. Chainsaw Man began serialization just over a year ago on December 3rd, 2018. That's nearly a year after the completion of author Fujimoto Tatsuki's previous work, Fire Punch. While Fire Punch saw enough success to have an official English release, it has yet to receive an anime adaptation. A yearly magazine meant to showcase the best new shonen placed Fire Punch at number 3rd amongst their male demographic. In 2019, Chainsaw Man reached the 4th spot, while Demon Slayer placed 6th, and Dr. Stone placed all the way down at 17 for comparison. This is really just one poll, but I think it's still telling about how both of this author's works were able to top the list despite the lack of name recognition like the spin-off material, which placed number 1 in 2017, or the boost in popularity via anime seen by Dr. Stone or Demon Slayer. I'd mostly like to chop this up to 2 factors. Fujimoto's works are fast-paced and fun action series, with a unique writing style. The story of Chainsaw Man comes off a little...
It's a bit nutty.
We follow Denji, an extremely impoverished boy in a world inhabited by demons. The only way he can provide for himself / survive is by hunting them for money. Demons exist as incarnations or manifestations of specific fears held by society. The more feared by society, the more powerful the demon. For example, Denji hunts demons through the power of the Chainsaw Devil, which has fused with him, creating a half-devil, half-human. A Devilman, if you... Hey, wait a minute! Yeah, one of the draws of this manga is the amount of references it has to classic seinen manga and the horror genre. Even the name and the premise of the series is a reference to the classic Devilman, which I shouldn't have to explain thanks to Masaaki Yuasa and Netflix. Some of the references are even more overt, like this demon who shows up for one panel, straight out of a Junji Ito manga. Or this chapter, titled after the, cult classic? Sharknado. Even though that's only in fan translations. But I feel like that's a little bit more due to copyright laws than anything else. It goes further than just references to horror material. The entire series is a battle shonen coated in a horror aesthetic. The two work extremely well together, because the horror adds a different, more serious tone to a lot of aspects common in shonen. It also amplifies those fundamental aspects of battle shonen. The horror setting gives them a new gritty, visceral feeling that helps to impart weight and realism. Enemies are no longer anime pretty boys, but rather deformed creatures who look as if they'd be at place in a Cronenberg or Carpenter film. The transformations and powers are now painful, leaving permanent scars on our characters. And of course, there's the fights. They're messy, filled to the brim with blood and gore, to match even the schlockiest of horrors. All this mixed with its comedy gives the series a very Evil Dead feel,
Groovy.
Only with the insanity and scale ramped up to an extreme degree. This helps boost the already integral feature of battle shonen, storytelling through violence / fighting. SuperEyePatchWolf has a great video on this, I highly suggest checking that out. Fujimoto pulls all this off with amazingly well detailed art during the battle scenes. Even if you're not the biggest fan of gore or violence, The inventive power system, energetic pacing, and absolutely insane characters will assuredly have you binging the series. With 50 chapters out, I was able to easily catch up in just one sitting, which is normally unheard of for me, but I can't help but feel that Fujimoto's writing style lends itself to this quick reading. The bulk of the story is told visually, and while I'll admit that the art outside of combat is, on a technical level, probably Chainsaw Man's only negative, Fujimoto knows how to use his visuals to tell as much of a story as he can. A good example of this is the way he draws his faces. I absolutely love this blank facial expression, especially compared with the wackier ones of Denji or Power here. Despite all of these drawings seeming somewhat off, they use it to convey something completely different. In the case of Denji or Power, it's usually to showcase comical stupidity, excitement, or devilry. The sketchy look adds to their comedic value. Makima is a different case completely. She, like many others, are shown with blank expressions as reactions for a majority of their panel time, which, matched with their ambiguous motives and the off-kilter art, creates an eerie sense of mystery surrounding her character. If there's anything which I feel is truly horrifying about this series, it's this ambiguity. We see the world through our increasingly lovable main character, who, sadly, is too stupid or ignorant to really understand what's happening around him. But while Denji either isn't around or is simply too oblivious, you are given just enough information to know that many of the supporting cast knows more than they lead on. In many cases, they understand Denji's position and past much better than he does. In some cases, it's as if they even have an invested interest in keeping him ignorant. This, matched with the eerie facial expressions, helps build a terrifying atmosphere where you begin to question Denji's safety at nearly all times. This can be seen in a more overt way in the first chapter, where Denji is hired as a contract demon killer. The Mafia is pretty obviously the baddies, but Denji doesn't really care about that. You see, that extreme impoverishment has led Denji to be kind of complicit in obvious manipulation in exchange for the most mundane of things. This eventually leads to his death. In these earlier chapters, Chainsaw Man is much more focused on comedy and action than plot. In this case, I think it's pressing that I bring up the objectification of Chainsaw Man's cast during that time. Please, hear me out. Shueisha's ads reinforce the deliberate sex appeal and ecchi aspects of Chainsaw Man as one of its primary selling points, secondary only to the insane violence, of course. I understand why they do this, but I feel like this is a sort of mischaracterization or mismarketing of the series. Let me explain. Chainsaw Man starts off feeling as if it's truly committing to vapid sex appeals in its early chapters. This is during a time where Denji's express goal is to feel up a woman, generally speaking, any woman. At this point, it seems to commit to this whole woman as object shtick we're all pretty used to. But then something different happens. Denji achieves his goal, and with surprising apathy, it's here where we begin to understand the true intentions of Chainsaw Man. While it uses the common sex appeal to draw in its usual crowd, the series makes it clear that it doesn't endorse objectification or the pursuit of emotionless sexual fantasies. One of the main things the manga seems to be concerned with is Denji's progression in understanding and building relationships and empathy. And it's hard not to see this as a theme which was in the author's mind since the beginning, seeing as how Denji's origin as an extremely poor social outcast allows him to be the prime candidate to explore these themes. He's a sort of blank slate with the narrative purpose of not only being the main character, but also a person learning interaction. As fun as many of the fights are, what really keeps me coming back are the humanizing moments. This includes times where Denji learns the difference between connection and lust, but also other moments. Like when he asks himself if apathy towards the well-being of the majority of people, or the world as a whole, makes him inhuman. What is human? Never mind all that. What is he? What makes him him? What does he want? Some of these questions are questions I've asked myself. It's these moments which really allow me to connect with a doofus who once endured days of battling an incomprehensible demon just to kiss a woman. This is what distinguishes Chainsaw Man from the rest of the battle shonen out there, and what I feel its true appeal is. If we were to compare the character writing in this series to your average battle shonen, we can really see the difference. One Piece, for example, is a really well-written but typical battle shonen, with some of my favorite characters, so let's compare the two. In One Piece, the main character Luffy wants to become the Pirate King. It's the same in Naruto or My Hero, to become the Hokage or the best hero. In all these cases, we're given characters who show a near unwavering devotion to one goal. They don't usually question themselves along the way, and never question their motives. Characters throughout the story, both in their party or as antagonists, act in opposition to the character's beliefs, but in the end, it's the main character's will which wins out. They were always in the right. The conviction they show is what proves it. These stories are less about a character's journey of self-discovery, and more about how these characters impact the world they occupy. Luffy never changes, but his world constantly does. This is why we often get arcs in these series surrounding secondary characters. I view this approach to writing as the Superman approach, and it can be incredibly effective when done right, but it also has the adverse effect of creating inhuman characters. Many come away feeling less like people and more like gods. Chainsaw Man is different, of course. There really isn't anyone who's positioned as right or wrong, and it doesn't even really deal with the absolutes of good or evil. Denji is fairly aimless. His goal is whatever he feels will make him happy. Never mind what's right or wrong. And that changes. It becomes more profound as he navigates the world and relationships around him. The world is certainly affected by Denji, but that's not what it's about. It's more about how Denji is changed by the world around him. How people change, and realize that sometimes what they wanted isn't what they wanted. People mature. People grow indifferent. People regret. This isn't always easy to notice in real life. Not at first, but Chainsaw Man takes the time to sit with these characters and their most vulnerable and isolated times to really get an understanding on these things. And I think that's beautiful. At the end of the day, no matter how goofy or powerful he is, I can't help but feel that Denji is human. So, what is Chainsaw Man? It's definitely pretty metal, but that doesn't really come close to describing it. What Chainsaw Man really is romantic, and above all else, human. And with all that being said, I couldn't recommend Chainsaw Man any more than I am right now. If I've piqued your interest, you can read the official translation of Chainsaw Man over at Viz.com. This isn't a paid sponsorship, I just want to give them a shout out, as the translators really deserve the appreciation. That being said, hey Viz, if you want to give me a sponsorship, Anyways, I hope you liked the video. I was thinking of making more like this for everything currently running in Weekly Shonen Jump, and then ranking them accordingly. I'd like to call this something like the Shonen Gauntlet. If you want to see that, please say so down in the comments below. Of course, do all the normal YouTube stuff, yada yada yada. I have a Twitter. If you want updates, follow me there. Links in the description. I would say watch my previous videos, but they're honestly kind of trash. Anyways, have a nice day.